Welcome, everybody, to another edition of The Rundown presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. The Rapids see red in LA, but now Vancouver descends into Denver this weekend. And looking ahead, Seattle on the horizon for the Rapids for another midweek matchup. That and more on the Colorado Rapids podcast. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Colorado Rapids podcast presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. I'm your host, Mike Ravolo, alongside my good friend and resident Rapids legend, Drew Moore. Drew, how we doing, man? I just saw you a couple days ago for a podcast filming that we had for, it's busy season. It's the summer.
It is very busy. I'm a little bitter this morning.
You and I both.
A little bitter. It was a rough late night for everybody here in Rapids land, which we'll get into. But, one thing about, a busy stretch in the season is, when things don't go your way, you have an opportunity to bounce back very quickly afterwards, which I anticipate, I anticipate us doing. But a strange one in LA last night, to say the least.
Yep. We'll get into it. We will get into that. But a couple things I wanted to touch base on real quick is before we get into the recap between LAFC and Colorado from last night. Obviously, as you mentioned, and as we both mentioned, it's a madhouse right now. And just football here in this country, at least between MLS, U.S. Open Cup, Canadian Championship, Club World Cup, which is that's been a lot of fun.
It has.
When a lot of folks didn't know what that was going to look like. So much going on yesterday from the afternoon and through the evening here between the U.S. and Canada with all the football that we had going on. And I ain't complaining. It's a lot of fun.
It sure is, yeah.
And then the next thing, you were a part of a shoot that we did recently.
I sure was.
Kind of flexing in the kid. And
wow.
Obviously, we can't put anything out just yet until next Wednesday. No. But what did you make of the kit? How did the shoot go? Fill us in, Drewby.
The shoot was great. It was at a really cool spot downtown. I don't want to get too much into any of it, right? I don't want to get in trouble, but it's going to be awesome. I think fans and neutrals will really dig what the Rapids have done with their third kit here, which I think is cool. Anyway, I feel like all teams every year, in my opinion, should do a third kit just for a little. It's just to spice it up a little bit. Obviously you love the traditional, home and away or first and change strip, but that third kit that you can sprinkle in every once in a while. But yes, this one is going to be awesome. The shoot was a lot of fun. Just stay tuned. Keep your eyes open. I'll leave it at that.
At time of recording, it's less than a week out at this point, so not much longer to wait. If you're a fan, I'm trying. I can't wait next Wednesday, so less than a week from now. So mark your calendars if you haven't already, because I would be excited if I were you with that coming up. So we'll go from that into last night, Drew. So obviously last night at BMO Stadium, that LAFC was hosting the Colorado Rapids. The first time since CCC that these two teams face each other, the first time in MLS play that these teams face each other in 2025. Drew, we're looking at a play here that I think really sets the tone for the rest of the game with this Jackson Travis red card.
Yeah, and it's not a red card for me at all. I get it. His arm is high, but I don't think it even makes contact with Palencia's face. There's no force. He's not using his arm as a weapon. He's a little off balance, and I think Jackson's hard done by, and the whole team is hard done by because of it. I think the ref is too quick to go to the red card here. And he's not going to overrule it. I think it's. I don't think it's a red card.
So the Rapids are forced to play with 10 men basically the entire game, Drew. And really, this one rare opportunity in this first half that LAFC had to go in transition and pose a threat, they earn a PK.
And I don't know if there's any contact here. And Bouanga, he's looking for contact. He's looking for the penalty. I get it. And he splits the two defenders, and neither of them. It's hard. Where's the contact there? I don't see any, and Bouanga, he puts the penalty away. But I just think two calls at the Rapids are do we need to point to ourselves a little bit? Sure. But two big calls there that completely changed this game. And, I think the Rapids defended really well in the first half and take the PK away. They did what they had to do. The two early goals, and this is Ordaz's, this is the first one of the second half, and Dilrosun gets the second. But if we were able to sustain for the first bit of the second half, maybe the first 15, 20 minutes, not conceding and defending like we did in the first half. Then when you bring on Calvin Harris and Ted Pietro with some energy, maybe you have a chance if it's just 1-0, but it was always going to be difficult going down a man. And I just think some big calls that went against us on the night, and this is the result.
I know you kind of fleshed it out a little bit, Drew, but we'll get a little bit more in depth in terms of your thoughts overall on the match. But just really quickly here, we'll look through the stats from last night between LAFC and the Rapids. LAFC had 22 shots versus the Rapids 6, 5 shots on goal for LAFC versus the Rapids 2 corners for LAFC, 0 for the Rapids on the night. Possession, a 69.9% for LAFC versus 30.1% for the Rapids. As you can imagine, with the Rapids playing with 10 men, it was always going to play out in that way, I think, at least with the possession numbers. Straight into it, Drew, I'll just your thoughts in general. I know you kind of fleshed it out a little bit already, but I don't know if there something more you felt, for that you took away from this game. I mean, but it's hard to ignore the red card, I think, in the end, right?
Yeah, well, I've said my piece on the red card. I'm not going to change that. I don't think it's a red card. I've tried to put myself in LAFC shoes and obviously the Rapids shoes and neutral shoes, and I think he's too quick to go to the red card, and so maybe you can't overrule it because it's not clear and obvious. But for me, it is, and if he doesn't go straight to the red card, has a little bit of time for VAR to look at it, maybe it's just a yellow card, I don't think he makes contact with Palencia's face. Palencia makes a meal of it, which soccer players do this, right? You see about 10 seconds later, the camera pans to him and he's fine. He's nodding his head like, yeah, I'm fine, like no big deal, So I will credit the team for sticking with it, and defending really well in the first half. You were always going to be under a bit of pressure then, defending with 10 guys. Could we have just relieved a bit of pressure in moments? Yeah, that would be nice. It's easy to say that. It's much more difficult to go out there and do in LAFC against a side like that. But credit for the Rapids still putting in the effort that they did. Obviously got some of their guys off, in Georgie and Hoffa and Ollie once it was 3-0 to get a little bit of rest with this busy stretch. But, two big calls like that go against you that really I think didn't have to necessarily be called. It's an uphill battle.
I'm sure you've been in some of those situations, Drew, where maybe not that early, or maybe you have been in situations where a red card has gone against you and your team that early on in a match. So when you deal with that, when you deal with another PK call where you feel like maybe that wasn't the right call, what does that do to you as a player? I'd say physically, I think it definitely takes its toll, but what does that do to you mentally?
It's difficult. And it's not just in that, in that moment, it's you've prepared, for 2, 3, sometimes 4 days for a team, that you're going to play against your opponent and how they play and their tendencies and stuff, but also how you're going to play and what you're going to do and everything. And 5 minutes in, it goes by the wayside, and so it's really difficult to stay in the moment, to stay, mentally there. But you have to. It's a part of it. This happens sometimes. You go down to 10 men early in matches, but it is more of a mental thing, even though the physical output now is going to be much higher. You're on the road. You're against LAFC, a team that already is going to come at you with a lot of energy and pace. And so it's not easy. Obviously the coach, Chris Armas and the coach staff made a quick adjustment, which you have to do. Unlucky for Yappy, of course, who had to have been excited to get in, to the starting 11 and go in a big occasion like that, but. You just have to, mentally try to push it to the side and get on with it.
Yeah, I felt bad for both of them. So for Jackson Travis for that red card, you can see when it was finally confirmed after VAR had kind of initially looked at it, you can see he was bewildered, right? And so I felt so bad for Jackson, who was getting a start after a little bit after not getting that start up for a stretch of games, and you could see he was very clearly disappointed with that decision. And then to try to adjust for that, Yappy is the one who has to take the fall, to try to put in Keegan Rosenberry in this case to help defend and provide a bit of a better defensive shape when you're left to deal with play with 10 men. So that was difficult to see, because that's just the circumstances of what results from as you mentioned, what I think was a fairly unjustified call. But even, and Drew, you and I are on the same page in terms of like not being about moral victory guys, right? But there were some things that I'm a believer of, like, not the moral victories, but like needing to point out some of the positive things so that you have building blocks to go off of, right? A couple that I want to know. So in terms of performances, Calvin and Ted Crudi-Pietro, when they came on, it looked like they really did inject some life and provided something for the Rapids to kind of go off of. Again, they're playing with 10 men against an LAFC side at home with the 32-52 behind them. Difficult enough as it is, but it felt like when those two came on, they added like another dimension, I think, to the Rapids playing with 10 men versus the 11 of LAFC. I think they really stuck out to me last night.
Agreed, and that's been their form the past, month or so. Calvin at times off the bench, but certainly the last several games that he started, and Ted really ever since he's been healthy, they bring a lot of energy, they bring a lot of directness, and again, if we had just gotten to that point, still just down a goal, I mean that was always going to be difficult, but that they were a positive to even coming on 3-0 down, not much of a chance to get back into it. They brought some life, they brought some energy, and that's good to see because we're going to need that here, and you always need that, but certainly in this busy stretch.
And then the other thing I wanted to make note of was it was the Rapids. I think for that first half, like you had been talking about it as we were going through the highlights a little bit, the defensive shape that they had and were forced to be in, really being at 10 men. They look good.
They did.
The Rapids look good. I mean, well, let's actually roll it back a little bit because Chris Armas had mentioned this in his post-game press conference with kind of a slightly different shape formationally, kind of with the diamond. It looked like I think they were playing in the middle, right? And you could already see there was a bit of a difference with that setup, how they were kind of – LAFC looked a little uncomfortable, at least initially, trying to deal with that until the red card happens. The red card happens, and so the Rapids are forced to sit back much more than they would like. But as the first half went on, you could clearly see LAFC was – they were getting a bit frustrated, Drew. This is exactly what we talked about in the previous pod in the lead up to this LAFC match, where if you can force LAFC to try to find solutions, on the ball, with the Rapids being stubborn in front of their goal at times.
Slow them down a bit.
We saw it. There was a moment in the broadcast that I saw, 38th minute, where there's a shot of Mark Delgado, and he's looking at everybody like kind of a bit frustrated. He's like, guys, come on, like we need to get going because we have 11 men. And I said, this is great. Like the Rapids had been doing so well in the first half until, unfortunately, the PK call is given LAFC's way. So like I said, I'm not a moral victories guy like you, Drew, but you have to be able to point out the positive things to know what to build off of so that you can carry that into, we'll get into it, what is going to be a tough match against Vancouver here at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. That was something that really stuck out to me until things just kind of like petered out with the PK goal and then the early second half goal thereafter.
You wonder if we finished that match with 11 guys on the field, just what could have been. And I know that's hypothetical. That's not how it went, but on the night, agreed. The Rapids were well prepared and well ready to go in and get something out of this match, and it just all unravels early when you have somebody sent off. Yeah.
So it's one of those. It feels like you kind of toss in the bin very quickly, but keep in mind some of those positive things that came from that match to build off that. Especially, like I said, what we're going to get into in just a bit is this match against the Vancouver Whitecaps, who are looking a little closer to full strength as they're coming here to Dick's Sporting Goods Park. I think let's just put a capper on that. We can move on, Drew.
Let's do
it. So as we mentioned, we're looking ahead to Vancouver, right? It's busy season, so we're not only going to look ahead to Vancouver, we're going to get to the Seattle match that we have midweek next week as well. So everybody buckle up because we got quite a bit to go.
No rest for the weary.
No rest for the weary. So the first match we're going to be previewing is going to be the match that I just mentioned, is the Colorado Rapids versus the Vancouver Whitecaps. That's going to be this Saturday, July 12th, with a 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff. You can catch it on MLS Season Pass, but like I say, just come out to the stadium here at Dick's Sporting Goods Park, cheer on your Burgundy boys, watch them live in person, catch Drew maybe munching on something on Out of Bounds before then. Man, they just love making. They just make a meal of it.
Yeah,
forget the pun.
You should leave right now.
I should just walk out and we can.
No, don't. I need you. I need you.
So like I said, just you're better off coming to Dick's Sporting Goods Park. So get your tickets today so you can catch your Burgundy boys here against the Vancouver Whitecaps. Drew, let's look at the Vancouver Whitecaps in terms of their last three matches, as it pertains to MLS specifically. So they've been 1-2-0 in those last three matches with the 5-3 loss versus San Diego, a 1-0 win at LAFC, and then a 3-0 loss at Galaxy, which, they kind of capitulated a little bit there considering how the Galaxy have been this season. And then just last night, that they had the Canadian Championship that we had mentioned. They're part of this madhouse of football we got going on this summer. They earned a 2-1 win versus Valor FC, and it took a 91st minute game winner from Bjorn Utvig to get them ahead past Valor FC to move on in the Canadian Championship. Forward Brian White for the Vancouver Whitecaps, he returned to the lineup after he had some limited minutes with the U.S. men's national team in Gold Cup this past month or so. So like I mentioned, Vancouver, it seems like they're slowly getting guys back, whether it's through injury or availability, returning from the national teams. So looking ahead in terms of team comparison, Drew, let's look at the two sides and how they compare to each other. Colorado, they are 7-10-5. The Whitecaps are 11-4-5. Points, Colorado have 26. Vancouver have 38. Goals scored, Colorado have scored 24. Vancouver have scored 35. Goals against, 33 against Colorado, 22 against Vancouver. And then average possession, Colorado has 43.9% average possession, and Vancouver 52.9% average possession on the 2025 season. Last time out, so this is the second time that the two sides will be facing each other, Drew. Last time out that we were at BC Place, the Rapids were out at BC Place. That was a 2-0 win for Vancouver, where Brian White and Emmanuel Sabi, who's been a bit of a revelation for the Whitecaps this season, they both scored for the Vancouver Whitecaps. The Rapids had 0 shots on goal on the night. Again, a pretty difficult place to play against a very tough team to play. So hence the Rapids are really not finding much opportunity on goal. And like I mentioned, Drew, this is a Vancouver side right now that between injuries and getting guys back from that, national team call-ups, getting guys back from that after specifically with Gold Cup, they're starting to get most of their guys back. I'd mentioned the loss that they had at the Galaxy, the 3-0 loss. So along the way that they had lost Jaden Nelson, due to the red card that he got at some point during that Galaxy game, he will be unavailable for this match. And speaking of Reds, that Jackson Travis, unfortunately, will be unavailable for this match against Vancouver. Ali Ahmed, a winger that for the Vancouver Whitecaps, who I actually kind of like. He's pretty saucy.
Player.
I like him. I like Ali
player.
Ahmed. It's probably assumed that he'll be out with an ankle injury, and this is something that he'd been dealing with the Canadians men's national team since he had to leave the Canadian camp for Gold Cup because of this injury. So we'll see kind of where that sits once game day happens on Saturday, but we'll maybe probably not available for the Whitecaps this Saturday. So, Drew, this is a tough side, Drew. This is a tough, good Vancouver Whitecaps side that we have sung their, I would say rightfully so, have sung their praises on this pod, when we do our Around MLS segment, with the form that they sustained, not only with CCC, with the run that they made despite losing in the final, but also doing that with MLS play, which I don't think I'd seen any team do, quite frankly, in the history of the league, to be able to sustain your form in both competitions, because it's either one or the other. You would know that very well when you were with Toronto FC, that it feels like you have to kind of pick and choose where you kind of invest all your time and effort into, because it's tough to kind of distribute all that time and effort into both competitions. So they had faltered a little bit, like I mentioned, with injuries or missing guys to national team call-ups. But even with some of that, it still felt like they would find a way to win matches and still continue that really, really good form that they've had from the start of the season, Drew. So it's a tough test for the Rapids facing this Whitecap side coming here to Dick's Sporting Goods Park on Saturday.
Yeah, for sure. And I think our matchup against them, back in April, was a good blueprint of who Vancouver, who they are, regardless of their lineup. They like to dominate possession, especially through their midfielders with Berhalter and Vite. I know Kubas has missed a little bit of time, but Ralph Priso, former Rapid, steps in, and then they're super opportunistic going forward, and with Brian White and Emmanuel Sabi, who's been a bit of a revelation for them, who we've talked about. And this is all without Ryan Gauld has missed the past several months. We've forgotten about him, right? Yeah.
Wow.
And so it's been an impressive run, certainly from Vancouver, and Jaden Nelson being out, will hurt them a little bit, because he's been impressive, maybe in stretches, right? His form is dipped and peaked, and what you expect from a young, exciting winger like that. But and if Ali Ahmed, he's set to miss a little bit of time here, it looks like. But with that being said, they've done extremely well and maybe are starting to show some cracks and a couple losses here in their last several matches. But with that being said, a great opportunity for the Rapids to get 3 points here at home at altitude against a team that that is well in front of them in the table right now.
Yeah. Typically, these are the kind of matchups you would look forward to, right? Even after like a result that the Rapids sustained against LAFC just last night. But then, as you mentioned, this is a prime opportunity to just kind of flip the page, go up against. Maybe this is probably the best opportunity that you can have this to be able to kind of turn things around and face a team like Vancouver to kind of show yourself out as the Rapids and be like, hey, we're here. Like, we haven't been having the best of moments, stretches lately with some results that haven't gone our way or calls that don't go our way. But when you come up against a team like this, it's like, you know what? Everybody kind of like flip the switch. And you never know, man. It's a funny league where sometimes, the Rapids don't find themselves further up the table where they would like, kind of flirting a little bit above the playoff line. So on paper, maybe a more favorable matchup for the Whitecaps, right? Yeah. But if you're the Rapids, I think you look at this like, all right, fine. You can look at it that way if you'd like, but we're going to get after you guys, especially here at home.
Yeah, games aren't played on paper, are they? And so I think it's a great opportunity. And for me, a player that you have to focus in on for the Whitecaps, there's a couple, but the one I'm choosing for Saturday night is Sebastian Berhalter. The form he's been in this season, both with the Whitecaps and with the U.S. men's national team, he got in about 30 minutes, I believe, in their Canadian Championship match last night. Back in with the side, his ability. Both sides of the ball in midfield has been very impressive, and he was always a solid player for Vancouver the last couple of seasons, but really has taken a step forward this season. He's strong, he's aggressive, he's physical, he's a good ball winner, and then his distribution is impressive both from the run of play and from set pieces. And when you have players like Brian White and Pedro Vite, around you that can, get onto these passes and help create with you and some of their wing plays and Sabi, Berhalter is having quite the season. And if you take him out, if you limit his ability to get on the ball with time and space to be kind of that destroyer in the midfield, so be clean on the ball, don't give him a short field, don't give him a lot of time and space, then I think that's going to be key in limiting what they can do, really both sides of the ball, because I do think he's a true, kind of two-way midfielder. But he is my key to the Rapids being able to limit Vancouver what they want to do on the night.
Yeah, he's having one heck of a season, Drew, and I think has rightfully earned the call up to the U.S. men's national team with the Gold Cup that they just had this past month, being as influential involved as he was with the national team as well. Fully deserved, man. It's for good reason that he's been there. I'll flip it over to the Rapids, right? I want to pick somebody on the Rapids side, Drew, that I want to keep tabs on. I think I'll mention one of our own midfielders, one of our own homegrowns in Oliver Larraz. So Ollie is going to be the guy that I want to pick out as a Rapids player to watch. Because I think he's going to play a very pivotal role in ball retention for the Colorado Rapids against a Vancouver Whitecaps side that likes to retain and possess the ball themselves as part of how their style of play. I think in the end, typically the Rapids are like a transition side or that appreciates the transition moments against a possession-based team like the Whitecaps, right? But if that's where to find moments to be able to go in transition and retain some possession along the way as well, especially being here at home against the possession-based side that is Vancouver. Someone like Oliver Larraz is going to be so key. And Oliver Larraz, who I think is one of the better midfielders in retaining the ball in the league, I would say. I feel like I'm not out of place in saying that. So someone like that to be able to help maintain possession for the Colorado Rapids, especially here at home at altitude against the Vancouver Whitecaps, I think is going to be key so that the Rapids can find those moments to kind of like breathe on the ball, if you will, and kind of rest on the ball, if that makes sense. Knowing that they're up against a Vancouver Whitecaps side that's going to want to possess the ball, and maybe they try to tire out the Rapids, right? But I think the Rapids will want to flip the script a little bit on that. And I think Ollie's going to play a very, very key role in helping the Rapids retain possession and finding opportunities on goal as well.
I agree, and I like that pick because it kind of I'm going to build off of it with my key to the match for the Rapids, and it is to make this Vancouver side suffer a little bit, right? We are a side that when we have the opportunity to go forward, whether it's in transition or directness, breaking lines, we want to do that, and because that's what this team is built on in attack. But there are going to be moments where Oliver Larraz, Josh Atencio, whoever's in the midfield there needs to take the sting out of a little bit and make Vancouver move, make them run side to side, make them run forward to back, right? Make them suffer in this altitude a little bit. They have heavy minutes under their legs with the competitions that they've been in, right? They've had to rotate their squad a bunch of times, right, through international absences, through injuries, just because of their jam-packed schedule that they've had so far. And so they come here to altitude in the hot summer, and you have to make them suffer and find those moments to tire them out a little bit, right? Of course, when it's time to be opportunistic and go forward, you go forward. But can you find some spells where you're making them run and you get, you kind of play the long game. You get to minute 50, 60, 70, they're going to start to go. The legs are going to start to go. The lungs are going to start to go. And so, yeah, I'll play off of your, Ollie as our player to watch, the way that he plays, the way that the midfield can play to tire Vancouver out a little bit. That'd be my key. What's your key, Mikey?
So for me, is building off a little bit. We're talking about building blocks. It feels like it's the theme of the episode this time around.
We need some Legos.
So I had mentioned that, kind of the just being able to possess the ball, tire out Vancouver a little bit. Once those gaps start to open up, right? When you move Vancouver side to side, tire them out, their legs start to go, the lungs start to go, the minds start to go with that as well, right? At some point, the altitude will kind of take its toll on Vancouver a little bit. Once you put the Whitecaps in a position like that, if you're the Rapids, be opportunistic.
Yep. The
moment an opportunity that goal presents itself, you have to finish. It's not just Rafa Navajo. It's not just Georgi Mihailovic. That's on anybody who gets into a goal-scoring position, right? Because if you're moving Vancouver left and right, side to side, and trying to find some sort of opening in between the lines, half spaces, wherever, right? Or crosses from outside and like putting in the extra pass if it's necessary, as Chris Armas and the coaching staff like to say. Find, as soon as you retain the ball and move Vancouver side to side, find those moments, find those gaps that you can create by having possession against Vancouver. Have to take advantage of those opportunities. And at the moment it presents itself, throw your body, do what you have to do if you're a Rapids player to score the goal. No matter what you have to do, just do it, score the goal. Because, again, this is a Vancouver Whitecaps side that has shown their defensive stability. Obviously, offensively, their output speaks for itself with the quality of players that they have and the stats to show for it. So when those opportunities present themselves for the Rapids, you have to score. You have to score. And I think if you do, especially early on, maybe try to catch Vancouver off guard early on, but obviously I feel like this is the long play.
Yeah.
Take advantage of those opportunities, and you can walk out with 3 points from this building against a very good Vancouver Whitecaps side.
Yeah, don't let the long play get in the way of scoring an early goal,
Yeah.
or any opportunity. It doesn't matter when the goals come. Be opportunistic. Be opportunistic.
Yeah. So, like we said, this is like we've sung their praises throughout the season, Vancouver Whitecaps, but I say rightfully so because they're a very, very good team. Yes, they have shown some cracks as of late, as you said, but it's the Vancouver Whitecaps. It's the 2025 Vancouver Whitecaps that have shown that they can take on anybody and score as many goals as they like against anybody. They're just tough to play against. So, even here at Dick's Sporting Goods Park, it'll be tough to play against them. But that's where we're going to rely on the viewers and the listeners to come to Dick's Sporting Goods Park and support your Burgundy boys. Because I always love seeing everybody show up at Dick's Sporting Goods Park and like just creating the vibe there. Like I'm a bit of a sucker for a good environment. So
it typically is here.
Which it typically is.
Make sure it is Saturday night.
Yes. So I'm looking forward to that match against Vancouver Whitecaps. It'll be a good matchup, a tough matchup, but a good one nonetheless. Just a quick reminder that matchup between the Colorado Rapids and the Vancouver Whitecaps is going to be this Saturday, July 12th, 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff. Where else but Dick's Sporting Goods Park? So make sure you guys get your tickets today and show up. Show up to Dick's Sporting Goods Park and cheer on your Burgundy boys. That's match number 1 that we're previewing.
We're not done yet.
We're not done yet, everybody. Boys and girls, gather around because we still got another match to preview here. So that match is going to be another midweek match, Drew. Summer of Madness, that is, as we typically have here in MLS. It is a midweek match for the Colorado Rapids at the Seattle Sounders. That's going to be Wednesday, July 16th, 8 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff. We're rolling back the years a little bit. I remember those 7 p.m. local kickoffs 8 p.m. in
miss
this
those.
case. Yeah, I do too, especially when I'm sitting there late at night working on stuff after the game. So that is Wednesday, July 16th, 8 p.m. Mountain Time at Lumen Field between the Seattle Sounders and the Colorado Rapids. And of course, unless you're going out to Seattle to catch that match, you can watch the match on MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. Seattle, so as we are playing Vancouver this Saturday, Drew, Seattle will be at Sporting Kansas City. So interesting matchup. That one, of course, we'll keep tabs on that. And once we're on the pod next time around, we'll be looking back on our match against Seattle and Vancouver as well. So quite a bit to cover in the next episode. But yes, this Saturday, Seattle is at Sporting Kansas City while we're playing Vancouver. The second time that these two sides will face each other, right? So another Pacific Northwest opponent for the Rapids in a matter of days. Last time out between these two sides, it was a 1-1 draw here at Dick's Sporting Goods Park, where Seattle opened up the scoring late in the first half, Drew. It was the Danny Musovski goal in the 45th minute. Then not too long after in the second half, that Georgi Mihailovic would go on to open the scoring here. Actually, as we're rolling the tape here, you guys can see the replay. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys can see the replay here. This is Danny Musovski getting it was late in the first half, so a good moment for Seattle to kind of carry some momentum into the locker room. And as I was just mentioning there, Georgi Mihailovic getting that really, really very smart, clever free kick goal. And yeah.
Where are you guys going?
So that match that happened here at Dick's Sporting Goods Park ended 1-1 between the two sides. That was a 54th minute goal from Georgie with that wonderful free kick goal that he scored. You guys saw Stefan Fry there in goal for Seattle, but I would say that is not going to be the case more than likely next Wednesday between the two sides. I was watching this match, Drew, on Sunday Night Soccer between Seattle and Columbus when, again, it was so incidental. It just kind of happened matter-of-factly, but it really unfortunate for Stefan Fry when he suffered a head injury. He's currently in concussion protocol, which is why I say that highly likely he's not available for this midweek match for the Sounders against the Colorado Rapids. Thankfully, it wasn't so far so good. Like he had responded and put something on his social media.
Yeah, it seems to be recovering well.
So thankfully, it was nothing too serious considering how bad it did look initially late in that game. Jordan Morris, another player for the Sounders, who is their all-time goal scorer as a homegrown, which is a pretty cool thing for the club there. Injuries have really hampered him quite a bit more, I think, more than usual this season, Drew. So ever since really the match between the Sounders and the Rapids here at Dick's Sporting Goods Park, it's kind of been injuries and coming off the bench every once in a while to help out the club. So that, Jordan Morris has kind of been dealing with it a little bit in terms of injuries. And that's without speaking to kind of like the other attacking pieces that they have in general, right, in terms of how they kind of fit into the grand scheme of things for the Seattle Sounders as a group. There's talent. There's good players on that side. Sure. We're talking about the Seattle Sounders. We know this is a very good side that they always find a way to recruit good players and get the very best out of them. But it still feels like they're trying to figure it out with your Ryan Kents, your Pedro de la Vegas, who came in last season and still trying to figure it out. It is kind of interesting, the Seattle Sounders side, and how they're trying to figure things out. Jesus Ferreira, another guy, right? Yeah. Like, he was a known quantity in the league. So I don't know what you make of the Sounders side, Drew, with kind of where they're at this point in the season.
I think what a lot of people would say about them is they have all these really good, interesting pieces, but they just haven't quite fit the way I think the Sounders would like. But it's hard to ignore the talent of a Rusnak and a Jordan Morris and a De La Vega and a Jesus Ferreira, right? But it just hasn't, who's the number 9? Well, Ferreira has never been like a true like foundation, like platform number 9. He's kind of a false 9 that likes to drift a little bit. And Musovski has kind of taken that role and done really well with it, right? He scored, I think six goals maybe this season. So he's done well. Jordan Morris hasn't been able to stay healthy. They've got some of these younger pieces that have kind of come up through the system, and a Paul Rothrock who's doing well, although he's not really young anymore. De La Vega, has kind of been in and out of the lineup recently, but it's like they have all these really good, interesting attacking pieces, but it hasn't quite all fit together into an exact shape and formation, I feel like, and they've had to adapt because of it. Now, these are still players that you would love to have on the field because, they can impact matches, they can score goals, they can get assists. But it's been interesting kind of watch that evolution. this is usually the time of the year that Seattle kind of starts to put things together and goes on a bit of a late season run. They're in the playoffs, and they've shown that they can win MLS Cups as well. And so you kind of throw all that out the window. That being said, they have been interesting to kind of watch this season.
Yeah, the Sounders love themselves a home stretch. Second half of the season. I always think back to 2016 when they won their first MLS Cup. Granted, Nico Lodero was basically, when they signed him in the summer, that was the difference, I would say. So unless they have another Nico Lodero in their back pocket for this summer, we'll see. Because there's just so much talent, so many good players on that group that eventually at some point that good players just find a way to make it happen, right?
Exactly.
So that's where maybe the Rapids do find the Seattle Sounders in an interesting point in the season, because it feels like we said, there still feels like they're trying to figure it out, even with the talented players that they have, still trying to figure things out. But good players just find a way to figure things out and make things happen, score goals, get results. And again, this is the Seattle Sounders we're talking about. This is a team that is a perennial playoff team in this league, just a very good team in this league altogether. So the Rapids will have their work cut out for them, especially going to Lumen Field, a place that Seattle loves to play in, being at home in front of their fans. So speaking of
good players.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about quite a few players on the Sounders. Granted, they have quite a few of them. Who is one guy on the Seattle Sounders that you're going to keep tabs on, Drew?
The one I'd keep tabs on right now is Albert Rusnak. Just his ability to start their attacks, whether it's through his passing ability. He's good in tight spaces and combination play. He can shoot from distance, but he can also make his way into the box with his dribbling ability as well. I think he's still kind of the one that makes them tick, right? Ferreira hasn't found his form yet for Seattle. Musovski, he's scored some goals, but I think he needs some players around him in order to do that. And Rusnak has been that for him. Jordan Morris, we don't know his status. He did, come off the bench in their last match. And De La Vega did as well. And so for me, it's right now, it's Rusnak. He's still, one of the better passers and more creative midfielders in the league, and certainly within that group in Seattle. So Rusnak will be the one for me. And my key to the match, and I've kind of, we've kind of discussed it before. I've gone back and forth. Actually, my main key is going to be to manage your emotions. And a big occasion, another midweek match, on a turf surface, but whatever, that is what it is. But Seattle matches are always difficult because it's a good atmosphere. They, as you say, they love to play at home. They make it difficult for you there. The teams that find success going to Seattle that I've played for have been professional, right? They haven't let the emotions get the best of them, take the crowd out of it, and manage the ebbs and flows of the match, because you're going to feel under it at times, and that's okay. That this is going to happen, right? You're going to feel on top of it at times, and that's good. Can you ride that wave as long as possible? But manage those emotions will be the number one key for me. Tactically, if you want me to go to a key tactically, it would be their wing play, right? They like to get their outside backs, their wing backs involved, spread you across the field and then be direct and come back in, essentially, whether it's through crosses or into Rusnak who can launch attacks. So I guess I took two keys. I hope I didn't take one of yours.
No, I think you covered basically everything I think you wanted to cover on that. And if anything, I want to kind of like flip it a little bit in terms of trying to deal with Seattle's wing play, right? So I think the Rapids will need to be very mindful of their defensive shape. I mean, quite frankly, any team needs to do that against the Seattle Sounders side that loves their wing play, to kind of open a team up and then collapse on them immediately when they're going towards goal. Just taking advantage of those spaces that they do create, particularly with their wing play. So the Rapids, I think, with their defensive shape, they're going to have to be solid. Again, this is a tough place to play in Lumen Field against a good Seattle Sounders side when their fans get behind them, even for a midweek match. Defensively, the Rapids will need to be sound, and using that building block. I mean, this feels like the running theme for the episode here.
Yeah.
As once the Rapids have their defensive shape kind of sorted out and kind of suffer a little bit, as Chris Armas does like to say, I think the Rapids will need to suffer a little bit defensively in this match, but appreciate and, if anything, relish those moments of suffering. Once you find some defensive stability against the Sounders side, find a rhythm in this match where you can pick your moments and go in transition, and then find those moments where you can just just notice that Seattle maybe has numbers pushed up, and that's where you launch, whoever your wingers, your forward attacking players are. If it's, your Rafa Navajos, your Calvin Harris's, your Ted Pietros, whoever you have offensively in the lineup in the match for this versus Seattle, as for the Colorado Rapids. Find those spaces to put them in, play them into space so that you can go in transition once your defensive shape is sorted out, and find that rhythm against a tough Seattle Sounders side in Lumen Field, man. So a lot of work to be done because it's not, again, like we've said it over and over again, where it is not an easy place to play at Lumen Field against Seattle, who is Seattle, man. They're just good. They're a very good side. So it's like we talked about it going into the stretch. This is a tough stretch of matches for the Rapids. We had LAFC just last night, Vancouver coming to town on Saturday, going to Seattle midweek. It's a difficult stretch, but I think these are the sort of moments I'd imagine you as a player, you look forward to. It's like, yeah, it's going to be tough, but let's get going. Let's go. Like, this is, if anything, this is an opportunity for us to prove to ourselves, to prove to our fans, to prove to everybody else in the league. We're here, man. Yeah. We're not here we're not along for the ride. We're here to show up and show everybody what we're really about. And we know it, Drew. We've seen this side with this personnel, with your Georgi Mihailoviches, your Rafa Navajos, there's a list of guys on this group as well, Drew. We talk about the Sounders with how good of a side they are. Look at this Rapid side and the quality that they have as well. So a tough stretch of matches against very good opposition, but these are the sort of moments and stretches that you live for as a player to show up and show everybody what you're really about.
For sure, lots of games and little training. So that's exactly what players want.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm sure you appreciated not going to training, and you're just like, let's just get to the games. So just as a reminder, everybody, for that match. That is going to be the Seattle Sounders versus the Colorado Rapids on Wednesday, July 16th. That is a kickoff set for 8 p.m. Mountain Time at Lumen Field. And, of course, you can watch the match at MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. And breathe, because that was quite a bit that we had to get through, Drew.
I can't breathe. I got to go out and be on the training field here in 22 minutes.
Yeah, you do. So we'll get you going, Drew.
I'll breathe on the field, though. I'll breathe.
Yeah, in this heat, dude. Yes, stay hydrated, and that goes for everybody else out there. Just stay hydrated. It's been very hot lately here in Denver. Very, very hot.
It's a desert here.
You and the boys out there, stay hydrated, and coaching staff as well, because I know they need it. So everybody, stay hydrated. That's my words of wisdom, for
That's
this,
wonderful.
Stay hydrated, especially in the heat.
In case you didn't know, water's important.
So stay hydrated, everybody. And with that, my thanks to Rich on the production side of things. Of course, our resident Rapids legend and my good friend Drew Moore. I've been your host, Mike Ravolo.